speech, and through his composition on Ayurveda, the ailments of the body. If it is true that all these three Shastras were composed by a single man, Patanjali, then we can say he was certainly an extraordinary genius. Here is the famous fort of Chittor, which finds a small connection with sage Patanjali. In his composition on Brahma, Patanjali gives an illustration. Madhyamika is being surrounded by the Greeks. Madhyamika was the ancient name of Chittor. Greek warriors surrounded the fort of Chittor between 184 to 148 BC. This illustration suggests that Patanjali may have lived during the time of King Pushyamitra Shunga. Also, an inscription on the rock edict says that Patanjali performed a yajna for King Pushyamitra Shunga. Very little else is known about his life. Amazingly, the Yoga Sutras that Patanjali wrote could be fitted onto one single page. This is his complete work on yoga, which was later elaborated by Maharishi Vyasa. It is not known when the tradition of yoga came into existence, but on the basis of Sankhya philosophy, Patanjali compiled the sutras with precise classifications, sequences, and logic. In the history of mankind, Patanjali is perhaps the first one who demystified the elements of consciousness and arranged them scientifically. Ancient Indians had applied a unique technique for seeking knowledge. Here the experimentation, testing, and observation were not performed externally, but inside the human body and mind. It was believed all that exists in the human body, the same exists in the universe. So for acquiring knowledge, the use of telescope, microscope, or chemicals was not required. Instead, the observer himself became like a telescope and a microscope. It was believed that if the chitta consciousness of the observer is focused, pure, and peaceful, his vision would also become clear and focused. The process of concentrating the chitta consciousness is yoga. Therefore, yoga in India left its mark on many philosophies, arts, and sciences. But the concentration in yoga has a specific purpose. The way Ayurveda cures the diseases of the body, the same way yoga alleviates the disease of the mind, suffering. There are 4 chapters in Yoga Shastra. The first is Samadhipada. This chapter is meant for highly evolved practitioners. Here, various techniques and progressive dimensions of yogic concentrations are mentioned. After prolonged practice of concentration with total detachment, the state of self-realization is attained. The wisdom of the state is called Ritambhara Pragya. It is beyond the intellect. In fact, it removes the impressions of intellect. This state of samadhi cannot be achieved through ordinary wisdom. So the ordinary person has to start with yoga from the second chapter, Sadhanpada. Here, 8 limbs of yoga are explained sequentially: restraint, discipline, posture, regulation of breath, withdrawal, concentration, meditation, and samadhi. Yamas are 5: non-violence, truth, non-stealing, non-possession, and celibacy. Niyamas are also 5: cleanliness, contentment, austerity, recitation, and reverence for God. Patanjali saw God as a means for the cessation of the mind. He did not see God as the creator, destroyer, or operator of the universe. He was just a unit of consciousness which is free from the bondages of nature, Prakriti. The theory of yoga is Sankhya, which is atheist in nature. The priests of those times opposed it and tried to infuse elements of religion into it. Religion demands faith, but yoga is entirely existential, experiential, and experimental. The seeker, by controlling and regularizing his daily conduct through yam and niyam, sits in an asana. Asana is a comfortable and pleasant posture of the body. The body should not move. The vision should either be on the tip of the nose or the center of the eyebrows or at a target point. When one practices an asana for several hours, the body becomes steady and the chitta consciousness is rested in the infinite. On acquiring stability, the seeker then regulates the breath, and when the breath becomes subtle, that is pranayama. Pranayama purifies the mind and also cleanses the channels of energy. By making the breath subtler, the most hyperactive mind can also be controlled. After pranayama, the practice of withdrawing the mind from external objects and focusing it inwardly is practiced. Our life is nurtured through the sensory experiences of speech, touch, vision, taste, and smell, known as ahar. The reversal of this process, by withdrawing the senses from the external and taking ahar from within, is known as pratyahar. The inner journey of yoga begins from here. When the mind gets intermittently stabilized at any one point, that is known as dharana. The point of concentration can either be an object, real or abstract, or a thought. When dharana gets prolonged, it becomes dhyana. When dhyana gets extended further, it results in samadhi. Samadhi is the purest and steady state of being. Patanjali was not the discoverer of yoga. Where did it all begin? Traditionally, it is believed that Sankhya is the oldest philosophy of India. The Mahabharata also describes Sankhya and Yoga as Sanatana philosophies, that which have been in existence forever. But who was the first yogi? The name that resonates from the farthest end of Indian thought is that of sage Kapila, the originator of Sankhya, the greatest achiever of yoga. In the Gita, Yogi Krishna declares, "Amongst the highest achievers, I am Kapil Muni." People believe that no one ever perfected yoga like sage Kapila. But there are problems regarding the historical evidence of Kapil's existence. Therefore, let us begin the history of yoga from here. The figure of this 5,000-year-old seal appears to be that of a yogi in meditation. With respect to time and geographical area, the Indus Valley was the oldest and largest civilization on earth. Evidence of this yogi seal is found all over its biggest settlements.
The earthly form of Shiva is described as the Pashupati, which is supposed to be the horned deity. So a lot of scholars believe that perhaps this Pashupati, or the Lord of Beasts, probably was worshipped all over the region.
Professor Singh suggests that the animals depicted in the seal are Marutgans, and the human figure is Pashupati, Lord of the Beasts. To describe the seal, he refers to these mantras of the Rig Veda, where Pashupati is named as Rudra.
रुद्रस्य पुत्रा है, रुद्रस्य वीरा है, रुद्रस्य सूनव है, ये शब्द शुरू के मंत्रों में आ चुके हैं। ऐसी स्थिति में मरुदगण जो इसके देवता हैं, उनका रुद्र के साथ बहुत ही निकट संबंध स्थापित हो जाता है। रुद्र पिता हों और ये मरुदगण जो हैं उनके पुत्र हों। इन मरुदगणों को बाद में 7वें और 8वें मंत्र में रूपायित किया गया है पशुओं के द्वारा।
Surprisingly, the animals mentioned in these mantras of the Rig Veda are the same as depicted in the Harappa seal.
पशुपति को जो उनके पिता हैं और जो ध्यान की मुद्रा में है, वे शांभवी मुद्रा में स्थित हैं।
You can easily visualize Shambhavi Mudra in these twilight eyes, because here on this Harappa bust, the Shambhavi Mudra is clearly visible.
बाहर संसार को भी देख रहे हैं, साथ साथ अपने भीतर अंतर्हित हैं, योग की मुद्रा में हैं। और वे भद्रासन में बैठे हुए हैं। इस बात को प्राय लोगों ने नहीं समझा है। भद्रासन बड़ा विकट होता है, जिसमें कि दोनों एड़ियां जो हैं इस तरह से मिल जाती हैं।
Also in this mantra, the animals are shown with emotions of excitement, as if these children want to seek the attention of their father.
और योग की स्थिति यही है कि तरह तरह के डिस्टर्बेंसेस क्यों ना हो, लेकिन फिर भी व्यक्ति की चित्तवृत्ति जो है वो सब शांत होकर के और योगस्थ चित्तवृत्ति निरोध की स्थिति में बनी रहे.
I personally don't feel that it can be a representation of Rudra Pashupati. Scholars who have worked on that particular seal, they say that it is wearing so many bangles. And if you see it from side, probably it is a woman. The scholar who points out this says that during the Harappan period, mainly the cult was that of the mothers.
This statue was created 2000 years after the Harappa civilization. Here also the mother goddess is shown with 3 faces and seated in a yogic asana. In the present time also, women of this area wear similar bangles.
There is one female figure found almost all over the Harappan region, and sometimes the female figure is shown with lot of with exaggerated organs. And there was a concept of great mother goddess, and particularly Marshall, who excavated those 2 famous sites, Harappa and Mohenjo-daro. Now he has associated this concept of great mother goddess with the Harappan culture. Excavation I am doing now, in fact, in the Gagar basin. I did the work at a site called Farmana, which is close to Rohtak. And we have found the Harappan graveyard, which is spread over an area of roughly 3.5 hectares, much larger than the cemetery found at Harappa. And we are applying, in fact, most recent scientific techniques for analysis. What we have observed so far, that the women were in fact buried in the center of the cemetery, and they were buried with all their ornaments intact. Whereas in case of the males, in fact, sometimes the fractional bones are found. There are no ornaments, only few parts. So they were very evidence indicating that they were in the central part, and with all the paraphernalia in fact buried along with that. That shows that the status of the woman was really good in the society at that time.
If we consider the role of women at the center of Harappa civilization, and this seal to be that of Mother Goddess, then there is a strong possibility that Harappa society was matriarchal. The legendary 19th century Indian philosopher and writer Bankim Chandra Chatterjee writes, the sound of the drummers of the Durga festival reminds us of the Sankhya philosophy. What made him think so? Let's understand Sankhya, the philosophy of yoga. The ancient texts state that Sankhya and yoga are one. If Sankhya is the theory, yoga is its practice. Sankhya means accurate knowledge. Coincidentally, Sankhya also means numbers. To put it simply, it is a philosophy of the elements of nature in which the conscious entity is entangled. For the disentanglement of the self, the Sankhya philosophers used to meditate on the elements of nature. Sankhya considers 2 basic constituents in every living being, primal nature and conscious entity. Primal nature is known as Prakriti. Prakriti is the equilibrium of 3 basic elements, Sattva, Raj and Tam. The conscious entity is known as Purusha, Pur meaning limits or boundary, and Sha meaning restfulness. Each Purusha residing in the body boundary is a restful unit of consciousness. Purusha is not one, but many. Prakriti is a single entity that extends throughout the universe and is very powerful. There are 3 root characteristics in this world: static, action, and light. There is something in this world which creates resistance and brings stagnancy. This is known as tamas. In this world, everything is active. This activeness of the world is known as rajas. The third one, which illuminates the world and the self and brings enlightenment to them, is known as sattva. Sattva, Raj and Tam are the 3 fundamental units of Prakriti. Poets have spoken of them in white, red and black. Sattva, Raj and Tam are always found together. The primordial state in equilibrium is known as Prakriti. Any imbalance among them results in a transformation known as Vikriti. we see around us is the Vikriti or transformation of Prakriti. In the process of evolution, the 3 elements of Prakriti are transformed into 24 elements of nature. Here, Purusha is totally detached and inactive observer. Sankhya considers Prakriti as the sole creator. Only Prakriti creates this world. Prakriti is also symbolized as a conceiver and a dancer, and is often compared with the personality of a woman. Professor D.B. Chattopadhyay suggests that the concepts of Sankhya, Yoga, and Tantra may have originated from the rituals, principles, and fabric of the matriarchal societies of that time. Wearing bangles, this mother goddess is seated in a yogic asana. This shows that Sankhya and Yoga were an integral part of the matriarchic society of Harappa. When the lifestyle of the Harappa people is studied, one finds that Yam and Niyam of Yoga were practiced by these people. The most astonishing fact about this civilization is its abstinence from violence for almost 2,000 years. The Yam of Yoga brings self-discipline, and it seems that civil discipline was natural to these people, because amazingly, there is no evidence of centralized authoritarian rule.
There is no evidence of king or queen. We don't have any palaces in fact in the Harappan levels. Probably it was controlled or maybe administered by a group of people. Like that is sort of a democracy. In fact that the Harappans were introduced. The democracy in this country has survived without any threat. So this is again the important contribution in fact of the Harappans.
In spite of being peace-loving, these people were not careless about their self-defense. Here stands a strong fortification, the wall of the Harappa city of Dhoravira.
We do not know why such a strong fortifications were made, because we do not have any evidence of violence. We do not have very good evidence about the offensive implements or defensive implements used by or produced by the Harappans or used by the Harappans. And at none of the sites we have any evidence of any violence at all. So in a way they were peace-loving people. That's what we can conclude.
The first way to avoid being killed is to become strong and never to kill, never to provoke or torment others. The spirit of non-violence is the first step towards evolution, and this is the first lesson of yoga. And the second lesson is to keep the body strong and clean. Cleanliness is the first niyam of yoga. The body is cleansed by the process of dhoti, neti, and bathing. Even today, bathing has great significance in Indian culture. The biggest structure of Harappa towns are their bathing pools. People gave great importance to clean and hygienic environments.
We can certainly say that the Harappan cities were very, very clean, because the drainage system that they introduced inside the cities were perfectly hygienic. Every household you find the evidence of bathroom, and in some of the big houses, in either the front courtyard or in the back courtyard, you find the Harappan drains. The bathrooms are connected to the drainage system. So the entire network was connected to the main drainage, and a main drainage was taken outside the fortification. They did not allow any dirty water to be sprayed within the cities. When we talk about the contribution of the Harappan to the world history, this is the contribution that they were the first people in the world to develop cities, and they have taught the world how to develop well-planned modern cities.
The third limb of Patanjali's yoga is asana. The Hatha yogic asanas of the medieval period are so difficult that they are not included in Patanjali's definition of asanas. Bhadrasana is among the best 4 asanas of Hatha yoga. Patanjali is silent on these. But interestingly, some difficult Hatha yogic asanas are clearly visible in these 5,000-year-old Harappa terracotta figurines. Therefore, it is wrong to believe that Hatha yoga originated in the medieval period.
By the time these terracotta figures were formed in yogic asanas, yoga had already made considerable progress by that time. because the God himself is shown in a yogic posture.
The impression of Hatha Yoga is on the seal. Yam and Niyam are part of their lifestyle. The status of women indicates the Sankhya philosophy. These are the indisputable marks of yoga in the Harappa civilization. With the decline of the Harappa civilization, India moved from the prehistoric period to historical times, when the readable literature of the Vedas came into being. There are 4 Vedas, each of which has many Brahman subtexts. Related to each Brahman text, there are the Aranyaks and most famously the Upanishads. Fixing the time period for this vast literature has remained a difficult task.
Rigveda itself has different layers, earlier and later portions. Still, sober thinking now accepts that Rigveda can be dated from anywhere between 2000 to 3000 BC, at least.
The time of decay of the Harappa culture by natural calamities and the time of the writing of the Rig Veda seem to overlap. The geographical location of both these civilizations is also about the same. The description of the ideal city of the Rig Veda matches with the map of the Harappa city of Dhoravira. There are many similarities between the Harappa and Vedic cultures. But was the Rig Veda begun by the people of Harappa? A definite answer cannot be given, but let us investigate this in the context of yoga. The Prakriti of Sankhya is the central core of Indian rational thought, whereas the Prakriti of Rig Veda is more like a poem from the heart. A poem that is full of knowledge, mysteries, and wonder. To understand the emotions, aspirations, and songs of humans 4,000 years ago, Rig Veda is the only document. The Rig Veda has been declared a World Heritage Document by UNESCO. The seers of the Rig Veda were attuned with Prakriti. It seems here as if yoga is a means to connect one's mind with the forces of nature.
Utayundate manaye, utayundate jiye, yoga ऋग्वेद की बोल रहा है. मन को, बुद्धि को जोड़ना अंग्रेजी का योग है. ये मन भी बहली है, इधर उधर भागता है. इसको भी जोड़ना, एकाग्र करना.
But, as against the Harappa culture, Rig Vedic society is patriarchic. The act by which the Supreme Purush or Prajapati created the world is known as Yagna. In Yagna, Purusha sacrifices his essence into fire, just as man procreates by sacrificing his semen into Vedi or the womb.
Sacrifice is nothing else but a creation myth. That is by sacrificing himself, Purusha created the world. So every person imitates that particular great act. And he goes on imitating so that he becomes one with him, the creator.
Here, Vedic mantras are sung with the same intonation, accent, and rhythm as was sung by their ancestors thousands of years ago.
By simply repeating something, you cannot gain. It becomes more mechanical. So a point was there, that is why the Brahmanas came. That is what is the secret of the sacrifice. So every act was being explained. And why this is to be done? Because then it ultimately supports the meaning, which is the ultimate meaning of the sacrifice. Or symbolism of the sacrificial acts, you can say. So after the karma, jnana was more emphasized. There was a stage when that had to be emphasized. Then jnana to mere jaise logon ko bhi hai na. But I have not realized Brahman. By simply reading, by simply repeating words, cannot do that. And that is why it was realized that the Brahman is to be realized through meditation. श्रोतव्यो, मंतव्यो, निधिध्यासितव्य. उसका अभ्यास लगना चाहिए.
ऋग्वेद की सबसे अधिक प्रसिद्ध ऋचा गायत्री मंत्र है। और इस गायत्री मंत्र में जो कुछ कहा गया है, अगर उसे ठीक से समझ ले तो सारा योग का विस्तार समझ में आ जाएगा। गायत्री मंत्र जहां से चालू हुआ, धीमहि ध्यान करे, पूजा करे, नमस्कार करे, ये नहीं है, प्रार्थना करे, ये नहीं है, ध्यान करें धीमहि। किसका ध्यान करें? सविता का, क्रिएटिविटी, सर्जनशीलता। योग का एक प्रयोजन है, व्यावहारिक प्रयोजन है, व्यक्ति की चेतना इतनी जागृत हो जाए कि वो नवीन का सर्जन कर सकता है। वैज्ञानिक लोग बतलाते हैं कि अपने मस्तिष्क की 10% शक्ति भी हम प्रयोग में नहीं लाते, 90% शक्तियां सोई ही रहती हैं। योग का एक प्रयोजन है उन सोई हुई शक्तियों को जगा देना। जिनकी वो सोई हुई शक्तियां थोड़ी बहुत भी जागी, संसार में वही बड़ा काम कर पाए।
For new creation, to awake the dormant powers within is to awaken the Kundalini. The indication of Kundalini can be seen in Vedic literature, but its terminology came much later from the Tamil region. The language of Veda is symbolic. The elements of yoga are found all over its literature. In the Rig Veda, Hiranyagarbha is considered as the primal propounder of yoga. The fierce and wild character of Rudra of Rig Veda remained throughout the later centuries with Yogi Shiva. The character and behavior of the Kesin Munis of the Rig Veda remind us of the later Hatha Yogis. They are called Vatrasna Muni, indicating Nadi Shuddhi and other pranayams.
अस्ताचक्रानव द्वारा देवानाम पूर्वयोध्या।
Innumerable references of technique and philosophy of yoga are found in the Atharva Veda, Brahmans and Aranyakas. But the first revelation of the word yoga, in its classical sense, appears in the Taittiriya Upanishad and the Katha Upanishad. In Katha Upanishad, it is Yama, the king of death, who reveals the supreme knowledge and yoga together. The human desire of going beyond death is natural ever since our birth and is also the quest of yoga. Upanishads are also called Vedanta, the end portion of the Vedas. Chronologically, they were also written at the end of the Vedas.
The Upanishads will be something like 7th century BC, and as I explained to you, that there are two phases. The Seshwara Upanishad, this is a term newly coined, it is not a Sanskrit term. These two Upanishads can be placed in the later period wherein Rudra is identified with the first principle. This is very significant because some of the proto-yoga things, practices, which are understood in the Aranyaka and Upanishad portions of the Veda as a whole, they are also presupposed by Buddhism, by Buddha, and to some extent by Mahavira.
Gautam Buddha was born in the 6th century BC in Lumbini, in the foothills of the Himalayas. His father, King Shuddhodhan, provided him with all the luxuries for his enjoyment and pleasure. But when he discovered the problems of old age, death and disease, everything changed. At the age of 29, leaving behind his wife and son, the prince left home in search of the reality of life. He went deep into the forest, where yogis and ascetics used to practice. There in Vaishali, he met two yogis, Adar Kalam and Rudrak Ramputra. But unconvinced by them, he went into isolation to perform rigorous penance. So intense was his determination that he put his life in extreme danger. But later he abandoned this rigorous practice and arrived at this place, and resting his back on the trunk of this peepal tree, sat in Padmasana. He resolved, "Let my body perish, but I will not leave this asana without knowing the ultimate reality." Here the asana finds its ultimate expression as propounded by Patanjali. He may also practice Tamudra, where the tongue touches the palate, which is the form called Kechari Mudra of medieval Hatha Yoga. At last, on the full moon day of the month of Vaishak, he attained Nirvana. Buddha then sat in one asana for 7 long days. One of the drummers of the Durga festival reminds us of the Sankhya philosophy. Enjoying the bliss of liberation. Patanjali has described it as Anandanugat Samadhi. Then, through inhalation and exhalation, he meditated upon Pratitya Samudpad. This is known as Patanjali's Vitarkanugat Samadhi. He then arose, walked, and stood here, motionless. This place later came to be known as Animesh Lochan, without blinking the eyes. For 7 continuous days, motionless, without blinking his eyes, he gazed upon his place of enlightenment. In Hatha Yoga, this practice of the blank gaze is known as Tratak and has great significance. Buddha's enlightenment preceded Patanjali by 300 years. As we see here, the precise use of asana, dhyana and samadhi. Siddhartha Gautam Buddha, one of the greatest yogis of India, said, "I saw the ancient path and traversed upon it." Having used the doctrines and techniques of the time, Buddha marched ahead. He believed that the concept of the immortal soul of the Upanishads would not eliminate the sufferings of man, and also that the concept of the immortal Purusha of Sankhya would not wipe away the tears of man. His doctrine of dharma proclaims, "Come and see, ehi pasiko," not to believe from before, but to believe after seeing. And when you have seen already, where is the need to believe? But there are some fundamental questions that cannot be answered, but only realized. Lord Buddha called them Avyaktani, that which is inexplicable. Perhaps this is the greatest leap of spirituality towards science. Seeing is believing, and not believing is seeing. Religion with blind faith and a conditioned mind is the greatest obstacle to spiritual evolution. In the name of religion or faith, man kills fellow human beings with no remorse. The aftermath of such mass murders is the shedding of copious tears by widows and orphans that would be greater than the waters of 7 oceans. The Buddha was compassion incarnate, and his greatest compassion is in not forcing us to believe anything. His religion gives freedom in the beginning and liberates man.